afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to today's episode of Sincere Christianity, episode 2. As I said yesterday, I know that this isn't usually what people use TikTok for, but I would like to ask you if you would like to spend a few minutes with me while we talk about Jesus. This is Passion Week, like I had mentioned, and I have been going day by day and doing daily Bible studies and meditations on the life of Jesus and the events surrounding his death and resurrection. Today's passage, I'm going to admit, I'm a little bit nervous about talking about it because it is one of those passages that I don't want to say controversial, but it's one of those that gets a lot of people riled up. But I don't want to tiptoe around it because hidden in the passage is such a gem of Christianity and who our God is that I don't want to ever lose that or overlook it. So let's dig into it. Today's passage is going to be taken from the book of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 12 through 13. I know, the cleansing of the temple. Scary, right? Well, let's go ahead and read it anyway. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he said to them, "It is written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer,' but you are making it a robber's den." I feel like a lot of people look at this passage and say, haha, where's the love in this passage? Where's the love? And yes, we do worship a God of love, but he also has other qualities such as justice and holiness. And holiness is the quality that I want to talk about today, because it is so important, especially when looking at this passage, to help us understand why. Now, what is holiness? Well, there was a time that I was writing one of the books, and for whatever reason, I decided to Google the definition of holiness. Big mistake. Because the definition, although it's not word for word, said something like that pertaining to which is religious, or an exclamation such as, "Holy cow." I feel like using that definition to define holy is kind of like trying to fire a paintball at the Statue of Liberty and aiming at the bridge in California. That's how I feel about that. Because holiness is so much more than that. But it's also a really difficult thing to describe. I'm going to use a quote from A.W. Tozer, if he doesn't mind me borrowing his quote from The Attributes of God, Volume 1, where he says, "Language cannot express the holy, so God resorts to association and suggestion. He cannot say it outright because he would have to use words for which we know no meaning. He would have to translate it down into our own unholiness." He also states, "Holiness means purity, but purity doesn't describe it well enough. Purity merely means that it is unmixed with nothing else in it, but that isn't enough." And it's so true, because it really isn't enough. My job as a writer is to use words that describe things and bring vivid pictures into my readers' minds. But I cannot put holiness into words, because there really are no words. So, as Tozer mentions a little later in the chapter, he says God uses association, how we relate to his holiness. So, I'd like to take you back, if I can, to the book of Exodus. And in chapter 19, verse 18, it says, "Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. When the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him with thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up." Another favorite passage of mine is also taken from the book of Exodus, chapter 33, and beginning in verse 18. "Then Moses said, 'I pray you show me your glory.' And he," meaning God, "said, 'I myself will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show compassion on whom I will show compassion.' But he," still meaning God, "said, 'You cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live.' Then the Lord said, 'Behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand there on the rock. And it will come about, while my glory is passing by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back, but my face will not be seen. When you think about that for a minute, it puts it into perspective not only how powerful, but how holy God is. He said, you cannot see my face because we are unholy. And I have a feeling that holiness just disintegrates in the very presence of God. It's amazing. And anytime I think about it, it makes me feel so small and so unworthy. So you might be thinking, Autumn, what does any of this have to do with our passage? Well, the reason I brought up holiness is because I think as humans and as Christians, we often forget that the God that we serve, yes, he is love, and yes, he wants to bless us, but he also doesn't answer to us. He is sovereign and he doesn't answer to anybody. We as humans think that we deserve all of this from the God of the universe. Deserve? He created us. He created us. To be honest, he owes us nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I know that that's a really hard statement, but when you think about it, he is Creator God, the Holy One. We're the ones that sinned against him in the first place. The very fact that he chose to send Jesus to die for our sins, or the fact that he hasn't said, I'm done, I've had enough, let's crush this planet to powder now, is an act of mercy. Because he's giving us a second chance, and a third chance, and a fourth chance, and a chance upon chance when we don't deserve it. The thing about this passage, when you read it, you can also see little bits of love. And that love comes from, well, back in the day where this passage was, the people who would sell things in the temple would extort the people out of money. They would force people to bring the lambs that they were going to sacrifice, and they would examine that lamb and say, oh, this lamb isn't worthy because of XYZ. Then they would take that lamb and sell another lamb at a much higher price to this person, only to turn around and do the same thing with that exact same lamb to the next person. Not to mention, the currency exchange would always get charged a lot bigger amount for the currency exchange, kind of like we do today, where it costs money to get money in your own currency, only this was all taking place in the temple, which was supposed to be a place for people to come and worship God, and for God to be a house of prayer and not a house of, well, how Jesus put it, a den of robbers. Jesus was angry that they were trashing his house. It's kind of like if you have a house that you are trying to make a safe place for your children. You go and then you come back from a vacation or something and they have it completely destroyed and they're doing things that should never be done in your house. Wouldn't you be angry? Jesus had a right to be angry that they were trashing his Father's house like that. And he had a right to be angry that they were extorting the poor. God has a right to do whatever he wants. So, while it may seem that Jesus was losing his temper and just going crazy in this passage, it was still rooted in love, and also holiness, and justice. Sometimes I think we lose sight of that as humans, but you know what? It's easy to, in this land, in this time that we live in. I know, this is one of those scary passages, and I could have talked about it so much more, but TikTok will only allow me to go for about 10 minutes, so I thank you so much for taking this time to listen today. Tomorrow, I hope to talk a little bit about the Last Supper and the Garden of Gethsemane. Don't mind me if I cry. It's going to be a lot different than today, but thank you so much for taking the time to study with me today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be safe out there, and I'm praying for you guys. Bye now!